Okay, so this session of Torah study that we're going to begin now is dedicated. Geraldine, will you explain?
To my father, Charles Margulies, MD, and his Hebrew name is Pesachia ben Mendel Visora.
Right, Harofe, Pesachia ben Mendel Visora, Zichrono livracha, may his memory always be a source of blessing, and we dedicate our study today to his memory.
Thank you. He would feel very honored. He was a very sweet, kind man.
Well,
he died in 1970. After he delivered a baby, he brought a life into the world.
Wow, very nice, very nice. All right, and we enjoy his blessings to this moment with your presence.
Thank you.
So the Torah reading is Vaetchanan, and it begins on page 1005 in our Eitz Chaim Chumash. It's Deuteronomy, the second Torah portion. So it's chapter 3, starting with verse 23. And it goes on through chapter 7, verse 11. So a bunch of chapters, and famously, two sections of Vaetchanan are the Shema, the first paragraph of the Shema, the first verse and the first paragraph of the Shema are found here, and the second version of the Ten Commandments are found here. So there's a lot of material, meaty material. It's not just simply, and we traveled from here and we went to there and so on and so forth. There's the ground that was laid for us last week. We got, into the building up of the background. Started last week with the story that Moshe tells of, okay, we got to this point, how did we get here? The story of the spies, and so on. And we had Moses, describing how the whole previous generation was not going to be able to go into the land. And he says, and I wasn't able also to go into the land by divine decree. And then we have the very emotional beginning of our Torah portion, which is Moses' report how much he begged God to be allowed in. Let me please. Vaetchanan means I pleaded, I begged, I asked for any kind of merciful response. The word Vaetchanan means it's a reflexive, but the word chanun means compassionate one. We say, Ad Hashem kel rachum vechanun, right? God is giving, compassionate, generous with God's mercy. So God was appealed to by Moses, please, renege on your decree that I shouldn't go in. And that's the very beginning of the opening of the Torah portion, and God, of course, says, no, you're finished. There'll be a new leader, Joshua, and then
God said the phrase that Merrill asked about.
Yeah, which phrase?
If we were speaking in Yiddish,
right? You would say, God said, "Hakmanish kenchaynik."
Yeah.
Right. So that's it. And then starting with chapter 4, Moses gets into a serious set of statements that are both historical reminiscences, but also an exhortations to follow God's commandments. And then they will lead to the legal material in the Torah, which gives us both a review of commandments that we've encountered in the Torah before, some kind of explanations of those commandments, additions to those commandments, a little bit of tweaking, and then many additional commandments, many extra commandments that Moses tells us about. And so this is the way Vaetchanan is the introduction to that whole new setting. The exhortations by Moses to be loyal to God and to follow God's Torah include his reminding them of how unbelievable it was to receive the Torah. And that, of course, is the lead-in to describing the standing at Mount Sinai and the words that he repeats about that, the review of the Ten Commandments with slight changes from the way we have them in Exodus. So this is chapter 5. And then we get into chapter 6. And this is, again, telling everyone this is so important. This covenant is dependent on you. Listen, Israel, the eternal, our Almighty God is one. Love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your might. So that's in chapter 6. That's the Shema. And then we go backwards and forwards of, remember, be loyal, don't forget, don't betray God. Again and again, telling people that the consequences are substantial. If you follow God, all kinds of wonderful, beautiful things. If you don't follow God, it won't be good at all. Then the last section, chapter 7, again warns the children of Israel that they're about to go into an alien culture, and they have to combat that culture by any time they take possession of the idolatrous buildings, altars, and so on that the other peoples utilized. They have to be destroyed. Okay, not a pretty picture. And the reiteration that this is self-preservation. If you don't destroy those things, then you will be led astray, and everything that we have tried to create and everything that Moses describes as this amazing breakthrough of God talking to this people will be lost. So either we hold on to it and we preserve it and we protect it and we strengthen it, or it'll all be lost and disappear. Okay, and that's pretty much the end of the Torah reading. So after that brief review, inadequate as it might be, yes, who raised, yes.
I asked the question, why is it called Shabbos Nachamu?
So it's called, thank you, I didn't mention that. It's called Shabbos Nachamu not because of the Torah reading itself, but because of the Haftarah. What we just finished on Saturday night and Sunday was a 3-week period. It's called the 3 weeks, right? In Yiddish, the 3 Wochen. The 3 weeks from the 17th day of Tammuz through Tisha B'Av, through the 9th of Av. Those were the 3 weeks of the active combat and destruction within the city walls of Jerusalem as the Romans came to destroy the city and then finally destroy the temple. They breached the walls on the 17th of Tammuz, and 3 weeks later, the temple was in ruin and in flames. So those are the 3 weeks. During those 3 weeks, we have 3 haftarot that are called 3 haftarot of admonition. And they are tough harangues by prophets telling us how terrible we are and how much we've betrayed God and how much we deserve to be punished. So those 3 haftarot conclude with Tisha B'Av. And then after Tisha B'Av, the next 7 Shabbatot, the next 7 weeks that bring us to Rosh Hashanah. So guess what? It's only about 7 weeks until Rosh Hashanah. Pretty scary idea. Are called 7 weeks of consolation. And each haftarah, each prophetic reading is a chosen because it pours out reassurance and consolation and comfort to the Jewish people, saying whatever we've gone through, whatever anger God has poured out upon you, all of that will end, or it has ended, and instead you should be consoled because God will always forgive you and take you back. So the first words of the Torah reading for this coming Shabbat, the Torah reading for Vaetchanan, is Nachamu, Nachamu, Ami. Be comforted, my people. Chapter 40 from Isaiah. So, actively go out and give the people comfort. So Shabbos Nachmu gets its name from the first words of this week's Haftorah, and it's always the Haftorah for Vaetchanan. In general, the Haftorah is chosen because it has some kind of link with the Torah reading. It might mention some of the same heroes or figures that are in the Torah reading. If there's a Torah reading about Jacob, so the Haftorah will mention Jacob, or there'll be a concept that is echoed between the Torah reading and the prophetic reading. When it comes to these Haftorahs, they are much more loose or loosely connected. They're much more thematically linked to each other, and in terms of the calendar, and not the Torah reading. Although the Torah reading also, as we will continue to get closer to Rosh Hashanah, we'll see that the Torah reading is very meaningful as a preparation for the high holy days. When we finally get toward Rosh Hashanah, we used to have all these very moving discussions by Moses about repentance. So there's a certain amount of coherence between our calendar, if we follow, and the Torah readings, if we follow a yearly Torah reading. The themes of the Torah itself and the holidays of the Jewish year end up gelling together. Okay, does anybody want to focus on any particular? Okay, Sarita, you raised your hand. What?
Well, because this is always something that, I find very poignant. It's on page 1022. It's it's after the retelling of the Ten Commandments. The people asking Moses to be their intermediary, because they're frightened. And then and it seems a little bit different from how this is portrayed, but this is also back in Yitro also talking about how they asked Moses you talk to God, we're too scared.
Right. Okay, so you want to look at page 1022 and that section there.
Yeah, I guess actually it starts with verse 19, right on 1021, right after the telling of the command.
Okay. But in order to do that, I would like us to just look at a little bit of an earlier part of the Torah reading, where Moses talks about his perception and his recollection of this experience that they had. Okay, so I'm going to find here, let's see where we go here. So, because Moses keeps on talking about it, then he gets, sidetracked, and he comes back to it. He comes back to it a bunch of times. Let's look.
1008, where he's telling, because that's also.
Yeah, but I don't want to go all that far back, because then we'll end up getting lost completely. Da, 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 da. Hold on a second. I wanted, because there is a couple of phrases that I want to make sure that we,
On page
that I
10.
that I get. So okay, so maybe
Is it where he describes the mountain being ablaze, and that's on 1009.
let's look like at 10:08. Anyway, even and
What chapter and verse, please?
chapter 10. Chapter 10.
So it's chapter 4,
Right. I mean, chapter 4. That's what I
verse
meant. Chapter
9?
4. Yeah, I meant chapter 4. You know what? Let's start from 5. Verse 5. Okay. Verse 5, chapter 4. This is Shani, the second Aliyah. And we'll look at it quickly in order just to get a little background. Okay, Sarita, your idea.
Okay.
So thank you for putting up with the extra stuff here.
See, I have imparted to you laws and rules as the Lord my God has commanded me, for you to abide by in the land that you are about to enter and occupy. Observe them faithfully, for that will be proof of your wisdom and discernment to other peoples, who on hearing of all these laws will say, surely that great nation is a wise and discerning people. For what great nation is there that has a God so close at hand as is the Lord our God whenever we call upon him? Or what great nation has laws and rules as perfect as all this teaching that I set before you this day? But take utmost care and watch yourselves scrupulously, so that you do not forget the things that you saw with your own eyes, and so that they do not fade from your mind as long as you live, and make them known to your children and to your children's children. The day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, and the Lord said to me, gather the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, in order that they may learn to revere me as long as they live on earth, and may so teach their children. You came forward and stood at the foot of the mountain. The mountain was ablaze with flames to the very skies, dark with densest clouds. The Lord spoke to you out of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but perceived no shape, nothing but a voice. He declared to you the covenant that he commanded you to observe, the 10 commandments, and he inscribed them on 2 tablets of stone. At the same time, the Lord commanded me to impart to you laws and rules for you to observe in the land that you are about to cross into and occupy.
Okay, right. So that's some very dramatic recollection. God says, remember this. This is a once in a history kind of experience, and keep on passing it on. And then Moses says, I've been teaching you this. I was able to hear all of these instructions from God. And he mentions that the mountain, the fire, and the clouds and everything. He talks about what they saw, what they didn't see, right? And verse 14, let's just read it one more time.
At the same time, the Lord commanded me to impart to you laws and rules for you to observe in the land that you are about to cross into and occupy.
Okay, so now let's go to page 1013, chapter 4, and let's go to 32.
Okay. You have but to inquire about bygone ages that came before you, ever since God created man on earth from one end of heaven to the other. Has anything as grand as this ever happened, or has its like ever been known? Has any people heard the voice of a God speaking out of a fire as you have and survived? Or has any God ventured to go and take for himself one nation from the midst of another by prodigious acts, by signs and portents, by war, by a mighty and an outstretched arm and awesome power, as the Lord your God did for you in Egypt, before your very eyes. It has been clearly demonstrated to you that the Lord alone is God. There is none beside him. From the heavens, he let you hear his voice to discipline you. On earth, he let you see his great fire, and from amidst fire, you heard his words. And because he loved your fathers, he chose their heirs after them. He himself, in his great might, led you out of Egypt.
Okay, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so we have again how awesome this is, how unique. This has never happened before in history. And you have experienced this your very, very selves. Now, with that background of Moses commenting again and again about how extraordinary the experiences were of getting out of Egypt and then coming to Sinai and having that awesome encounter. Now we go to 10:21, chapter 5, after the 10 commandments are repeated, and verse 19. Go.
The Lord spoke those words, those and no more, to your whole congregation at the mountain with a mighty voice out of the fire and the dense clouds. He inscribed them on 2 tablets of stone, which he gave to me. When you heard the voice out of the darkness, while the mountain was ablaze with fire, you came up to me, all your tribal heads and elders, and said, the Lord our God has just shown us his majestic presence, and we have heard his voice out of the fire. We have seen this day that man may live, though God has spoken to him. Let us not die then, for this fearsome fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, we shall die. For what mortal ever heard the voice of the living God speak out of the fire as we did and lived? You go closer and hear all that the Lord our God says, and then you tell us everything that the Lord our God tells you, and we will willingly do it. The Lord, the Lord heard the plea that you made to me, and the Lord said to me, I have heard the plea that this people made to you. They did well to speak thus. May they always be of such mind to revere me and follow all my commandments, that it may go well with them and with their children forever. Go say to them, return to your tents, but you remain here with me, and I will give you the whole instruction, the laws and the rules that you shall impart to them, for them to observe in the land that I am giving them to possess.
Okay, so let's take this section and try to understand it a little bit at a time. So again, Moses repeats this awesome description of God at the mountain, the darkness, the thunder, the lightning, the fire, the voice, the great voice. And then it was all written down, given to me. This is, saying how much, God has forgiven them, that God has given them this second set of tablets, right? And the report now is the reaction of the people. That's what Sarita really wanted it to, I think, focus it. So when we have Moses repeating or reporting what their reaction is, what do we get? What does Moses, like last week we talked about, what does Moses choose to highlight? What does Moses choose to, say, not say? How does he frame things?
So, he's saying that after, obviously, that they hear this voice, they see the fire, right? And then they come up to him and they actually say, yeah, we did see it and we lived, but we're frightened. That if we keep on listening or we keep on seeing the fire, we're going to get consumed, we're going to die.
Right. So let's look again at chapter 4, verses 32 and 33, page 1013.
I'm sorry, what, 32.
10, yeah, 32 and 33.
You have but to inquire about bygone ages that came before you, ever since God created man on earth. From one end of heaven to the other, has anything as grand as this ever happened, or has its like ever been known? Has any people heard the voice of a God speaking out of a fire as you have and survived?
Okay, so now let's come back to 1022, chapter 5, and let's read verse 21 again.
And
you
said, the
right.
Lord our God has just shown us his majestic presence, and we have heard his voice out of the fire. We have seen this day that man may live, though God has spoken to him.
Okay, and then the next phrase, let us not die.
die. Yeah.
Okay. So when we juxtapose those two ways of looking at it, they're echoing each other, right? Moses obviously has the first word, but then he repeats what he says they said. Can we see the echo there? Can we see that there's an overlap? Right?
Right. Well, he's saying that, isn't this amazing? Right? You guys, we all just heard God's voice out of the fire. Isn't this amazing? And the answer is, yeah, we heard it and we didn't die, but we don't want to hear it anymore, because if we keep hearing it, we're going to die.
Right.
Yeah.
So Moses is, and it's the same words in the Hebrew, right? The ending is, has any people heard, the voice of the Almighty God speaking from the fire, like you have, Vayechi, and lived, right? So, and then we have over here, like, unbelievable. Yes, it's true that we have heard the eternal Almighty God with all of his glory and greatness, and we've heard the voice coming out of the fire, right? Just that that the Almighty can speak to humans, bachai, and live, right? So the same kind of point, that look at what we lived through, except when Moses says it, it's like with awe and with appreciation, that look at what God is doing for you. Look at what God is giving to you. This is historically a unique experience. No people has ever had this before. And humanly, it's beyond what we would ever think a human being could endure. And yet we did it. What a gift. Now, when we hear the children of Israel's speech through Moses' report, how do they see it? Are they exuberant about this amazing, unique gift?
No, they're frightened that if it continues, they will die. Even though they experienced it, they haven't died, so they're not seeing the awe. It's frightening them.
Right.
They're overwhelmed.
Why are they going to die? 22, verse 22.
Let us not die then, for this fearsome fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, we shall die.
Keep going.
For what mortal ever heard the voice of the living God speak out of the fire as we did and lived?
So Moses just said that, right? Moses said it as a rhetorical, like, has this ever happened before? Wow, is this amazing? What other mortal has ever lived through this except us, right? But now we see that the very same words can be said with a different kind of intonation, with a different kind of feeling. Like, what mortal could possibly live through this? Okay, so far we've dodged the bullet, but it's not going to be forever. How much longer will our luck hold out? This great fire from God is going to devour us, right? That's it. So what's the difference? What difference can we discern between the way Moses feels and thinks about what happened and the way he's reporting these people's, feeling and processing of what happened? Jen, you wanted to say something?
I don't know. I feel like we're casting this very much as a negative, and obviously Moses is Moses, and he has a unique relationship with God. And yes, he thinks this is amazing, and it is. And yet, I feel like maybe there's somebody there who's, it's like, geez, my dad told me something about what happened to Aaron's son, and what could happen, when you really get into this fire. And so I just feel like this is a healthy respect for God. It's not necessarily, it's in a lot of different traditions, not only in ours, how dangerous God is too. And it's not, and it can be awesome and terrifying at the same time. And you can have to use a different tradition, you can have Arjuna be amazed at seeing Krishna as Vishnu, as the Lord, as of the head, and then still like, okay, that's enough, backing away now. I feel like that's a totally appropriate response on the people's part. I'm not, I'm actually a little surprised that Moses is doesn't have that response anymore. That must just speak to extraordinary closeness with God. But I can understand where the people are here.
Who agrees with Jen? The answer is, well, nobody wants to raise their hand. Come on.
Oh,
But who agrees with Jen? The answer is God does.
yeah.
God agrees with Jen. God says exactly what Jen is saying, right? We read those verses. That's verse 25 and 26, right? Where God says, whoa, I'm so happy, right? I heard what they said, and they hativu kol asher tiberu. They were so good to say those things. I wish that they would always feel that way. So God is, echoing what Jen said, and definitely, confirming, I like this. This is good. And how does God see it specifically? Right, in verse 26, what is this an expression of? Let's read that again. May they always
be of such mind to revere me and follow all my commandments, that it may go well with them and with their children forever.
Right. So the reverence, God says, I get it. This is great.
In Alter's version, it actually says fear instead of revere.
In which version you have?
Altars.
Right.
Yeah.
The word is yirah, which again is this very common word in the Torah, which means fear, awe, reverence, astounding sense of the numinous. So yes, it can have a range of those kinds of meanings. And of course here, fear, why would fear be a good translation? Because they're really actually shaking in their boots. They think they're going to die, right? That's what they say. It's not, reverence has this kind of very cultured, good, good mannered kind of thing, with reverence, we don't talk out loud. We have reverence. It's everything is, the
Totally important too. I mean, yeah, but yeah,
but they're saying, oh my goodness, if this keeps on going, we will be burnt to a crisp.
Well, they know before whom they stand, right?
Their lives. What?
They know before whom they stand at this moment. They know how terrifying.
No sugarcoating this. No, there's no distance. Reverence always has the sense of distance, right? Right. I revere what is over there. I can respect it. They're right up close, and they're going, get me out of here. Yeah, Merle.
Do you think this background could shed any light on perhaps why they started worshiping the golden calf and had this whole revelry going on, because maybe they thought they were going to die anyway, and they're just having
Well, the way, again, we have, all we have is the material that's presented to us in the Torah, and then our own imaginations about how we process it and what else we put into it, and our suppositions and so on. There's an ironic quality to this text, right? Because what does God actually say? God says, and it's lost in the English, unfortunately. What's Alter's translation of verse 26, please? Jen, you got the whole verse?
Yeah, they have done well in all that they have spoken.
That's
Would that
25. Yeah, that's 25. Now,
Oh, it's on the side, so I can't tell where it starts. I'm sorry. Would that they had this heart of theirs to fear me and to keep my commandment for all time, so that it would go well with them and with their sons forever.
right. So the beginning is really important. The way Alter translates it is, would that they would have this. I wish that this would be something that would continue and be consistent, the kind of fear and reverence that they have. I wish that they would have this all kol hayamim, not just this moment, but all the time, right? And this is very, very poignant. In the Hebrew, God says, mi yitain. Mi yitain literally means, who could make this be so? Who could give this situation permanence? Of course, there is only one big who in the universe, right? God is saying, gee, I wish there was some great power out there that could guarantee that they would do this all the time, that they would feel this forever. Mi yitain. Oh, I just wish that there was somebody who could freeze this at this moment and make this the permanent situation. So Merle's point, of course, is we know how fleeting that idea that they had of reverence and fear, how long it really lasted. And then there's another part of it, coming back to Sarita's whole interest in it to begin with. The other part that's really kind of sad and ironic is in what actually freaks out the children of Israel, the way they reported, of reacting. We're not Freudians completely, but so we're not going to look into what they don't say. But what do they say back in Exodus when they say that they need a golden calf? They say, our leader Moses has disappeared. Now we're at a loss. So coming back to this moment where their reverence or their fear has said, we can't take this. Moses, you go up. You be our intermediary, right? You be the person who's going to give us God's word. Then when we think about the golden calf, it's because they actually have a fear that they, literally shot the messenger, that they literally caused their own agent to die in the line of duty, right? They sent him up to that fiery place. Didn't they just say, what kind of human being could possibly live up, close to God? That's impossible. It's not humanly possible. And then what do? They send Moses up to go. So you do it. Right? So there's where there's this kind of tragic irony here, right? What's happening in terms of their own feelings and perceptions is they're caught back and forth, right? With this, first of all, they have a sense that Moses is almost superhuman or godly. Moses can do this. And then when Moses seems to be late, that feeling crashes down into itself, and they go, oh, maybe Moses is really just as human as us. And then we need something else. And they rush to the golden calf, right? They rush to creating a golden calf, right? And of course, they create Moses, according to this story, as their leader. And then they create the golden calf to be their leader. Even though God chose Moses, it was always a big problem whether the children of Israel chose Moses. Right? Moses was constantly struggling. They won't listen to me. They're not listening to me. They want to kill me, all that kind of stuff. So God chooses Moses, and that's a done deal. But how explicitly and how wholeheartedly did the children of Israel choose Moses? So here's where they do it, but then it gets them into trouble, right? Yeah, Sarita.
So I'm also, looking at, so here, and this is definitely told very differently from the way it's told earlier in Yitro, but at any rate, here God is saying, oh, isn't this wonderful that they have said that they will do how I instruct them, they'll follow my commandments, and that's really wonderful. So God is noticing sort of the good side, right? But the bad news is that, they have said that they will perpetually want to be distant from God. So that this is, where this barrier has been set up, and, I don't know that I would have reacted any differently, but it seems like it's always, it's always a question. How does one feel one's presence, right? How does one feel God's presence? So the people of Israel here were feeling God's presence, but oh no, we can't, and it's like, we don't have that. And, it's like, did this sort of set us up so that there would always be this barrier?
Yeah, I think that comes back to this difference between fear and reverence.
Yeah.
Fear is an immediate kind of response. And then I think what you're saying, the words I would put it into is, God says, I hope that this fear can be transformed and systematized, routinized into reverence. It's not, they're not prepared to have that kind of immediate high voltage experience of God, but maybe they can keep my commandments with a sense of reverence, right? To have fear of me, v'lishmor et kol mitzvotai kol hayamim. Right? That's in the end what the tradition presents itself with the Torah, and Moses presents it. This is the way we come close to God. We don't try to create fire dances. We don't try to create trances. We don't, challenge ourselves to go into initiation ceremonies that are life-threatening. How do we get close to God? How do we get close to God's will and God's love? By keeping God's commandments, by studying God's commandments, by studying God's Torah. So it's not as dramatic. It's not, the same kind of fireworks as the Mount Sinai experience was, right? And that's the risk, like you say, that's the risk. Once we establish that kind of safe distance, can we hold on to the tension of making that distance an active space, or do we end up just floating away? Do we end up losing the connection? And that's part of where God is saying, I wish somebody could guarantee this. I wish somebody could actually make this very tense balancing act that is happening right now last forever. And that's part of what we know also, is that it doesn't.
And also, if it's Moses is this special person who's the intermediary, he won't always be there. And of course, ironically here, he knows and they know he's not going to be continuing with them at all, right? So they're not going to have that. And how then, without him, how do they have somebody who can help them bridge over to God?
What is Moses' solution? What is Moses' suggestion about how to solve that problem?
To do as the Lord commanded you. And to tell it to your children, and to And
right. There are the who is not anybody else but us.
Yeah.
It's not going to be Joshua. There's not going to be another Moses. There's not going to be any national dependency on some great man leader. It's all about each and every one of us holding on to the Torah and then being the teachers to the next generation. So it's all on us, right? Moses is saying, when I'm gone, who's going to inherit my legacy? You are. You, the children of Israel. No second Moses, right? That's what we say, in Yigdal, we say, Lo kam Yisrael kemo shel. No, in Israel, there never, ever arose another person like Moses, who was a prophet like Moses. And that's, of course, the very end of the Torah. The very end of the Torah says the same words. If we look at page Deuteronomy, go to the very last verses of the book of the Torah. Hold on a second. So, right, page 1212, 1212. This is chapter 34 in Deuteronomy, verse 10. You got it?
Yes. Never again did there arise in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord singled out face to face for the various signs and portents that the Lord sent him to display in the land of Egypt against Pharaoh and all his courtiers and his whole country, and for all the great might and awesome power that Moses displayed before all Israel.
Nei kol Yisrael, those are the last words of the Torah. Okay, but what does it say? It says Moses is irreplaceable, what is can't be repeated. There's no repeating of Moses. Moses is the one who saw God face to face. In our Torah reading, Moses says to the children of Israel, "You saw God face to face at Mount Sinai." So there's this irony of Moses keeping on telling the children of Israel how special their experience has been, how capable they are of having this special experience. Who else but you has had this? And then the children of Israel say, "Hey, but we're not Moses. Moses had a face-to-face. We can't deal with that." When we go back to our text, in the last couple of minutes that we have, let's look at 27 and 28 again.
Go say to them, return to your tents, but you remain here with me.
Okay,
I will-
good. Yeah. Good. So there's the split. Right. There's the split. And the word tents here is the literal translation. But what it really, go home. Everybody, you can go home now. Right? When you think about like people come out, there's some kind of like disturbance out on the street, or God forbid an accident or something like that. All of a sudden people start rushing out and looking and seeing what's going on. And then, the peacekeepers come over and go, "Okay, everybody go back, go home. It's everything, it's over. Thank you. Goodbye. Take care. There's nothing more to see here. Go home. Go home." Except for Moses. Moses doesn't go home. Moses stays with God. Right? And Moses is singled out and is but it's God saying this rather than the children of Israel. God is saying, "Yeah, okay, I get it. And now go back to your lives, go back to whatever it is that you're dealing with in your family, in your job, in your career, in your chores, in your community, whatever it is, go back there. That's fine. Moses, stay with me, because I need to talk to you, right? Ba'adabra elecha, and I'll speak with you, to you, all of the mitzvot and all of the laws and the rules and the statutes, in order for you to be able to teach them, right? In order for you to be able to teach the people, the community that has gone back home. So stick with me a while, and then you'll be able to bring it down to the people that really feel much more comfortable being home and not going out into into a smoky mountain encounter with God. Anybody else have anything they want to add the last minute or two?
Just thinking about what it says about Moshe. I mean, where I think of, Korach accusing him, right, of sort of self-aggrandizing and wanting to be above everybody else. And here he's like, wow, guys, isn't this wonderful? We're all in this together. And yet it's just not happening. You know, it's like he didn't really want to sort of stand here. He wanted to stand with everybody else.
Yeah. He keeps on saying, follow me. And then he turns around and he sees people go in the other direction. And this, of course, is echoed back in the Exodus story also, right? He has this hope that so many, elders and other representatives of the slave Israelite community will be just delighted and will be so energized and inspired when he comes with the word of liberation, and then they don't show up. They don't show. Okay. To be continued, and that's the other message of the Torah, right? Always to be continued. Okay. Thanks a million.
Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Right.
Nice.
Whoops, I need to do 1 second. I need to stop the recording.